Hello and welcome everybody to the latest episode of Duo Talk, hosted by Matthew Cochran and myself, Marcin McAllister. We are absolutely delighted to welcome you all to a really beautiful and I think very special episode of Duo Talk tonight, or today, depending on what time zone you're listening. We are devoting this entire episode to the legendary Roland Dyens, the great guitarist and composer, and we have a very illustrious panel of guests joining us this evening. We have Louis Trepanier, we have Amy Clerks, we have Tracy Ann Smith, and we also have Laura Dyens joining us via pre-record this evening as well. And in fact, we're actually going to hear from the man himself as well. We're going to hear from the great Roland Dyens. And this was just a huge amount of fun to put this episode together. We've got a host of never seen footage of Roland performing and talking about music. And you have an opportunity to be involved tonight as well. If you've got any memories of Roland you want to share, you can do so. Any questions you have for us here on the panel, or anything that provokes your thinking about Roland or provokes any questions as the show progresses, you can do it by way of comment. So you might be listening here on YouTube, you might be listening and watching on Twitter or on Facebook. If you make a comment there, we will see that and we will answer that as we go. We'll do our best to answer everything that you put up. Before we get into talking about all the different things that the panel do to continue the legacy of Dyens, everybody here with us tonight has played and performed Roland's music or is behind various projects and various ideas to sort of further his music. Before we get to that, we're actually going to hear from Roland Dyens' sister, Laura Dyens. And Laura was, when I reached out to her to ask her if she would consider coming on the show, she was really keen to be involved because she's established an association in Roland's memory. But she was a little bit nervous coming on with all these English speakers. I mean, I know some of you speak some French and some Dutch as well, but we thought it would be better to handle it via way of an interview. So here in Glasgow at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, I have a wonderful student just now who is studying his Masters, Valentin Danisevicius, and Valentin agreed to take a little interview with Laura for us before the show, and we get some insights into having Roland as a brother. So I'm going to hand over now, and we're going to just watch this lovely interview that Valentin took with Laura just a few days ago, just before we've obviously gone live, and just to hear her thoughts about growing up with such a talented brother and what she's doing now to help honour his memory. So here we go.
Est-ce que tu peux te présenter en quelques mots?
Alors, je suis Laura Dyens et je suis la petite sœur, comme on disait entre nous, de Roland Dyens.
Donc cette émission est orientée autour de Roland Dyens, autour de sa musique, mais aussi de la personne qu'il était dans la vie. Et est-ce que tu pourrais nous donner un petit peu un retour de Roland en tant que sa sœur, au niveau de la famille, peut-être qui il était derrière sa musique?
Alors, Roland était un frère particulier, c'est-à-dire que c'était pas un garçon qui jouait au foot ou qui jouait avec ses copains dehors ou qui faisait des fêtes, etc. En fait, il faisait de la guitare tout le temps. Sans arrêt, c'est-à-dire que il allait évidemment à l'école, au lycée, il a passé son bac tant bien que mal parce qu'il voulait surtout jouer, mais il l'a passé et après l'école, il rentrait et il jouait de la guitare tout le temps dans la cuisine, dans notre cuisine en fait, c'était devenu son lieu de répétition. Et après les études, voilà, il n'a fait que ça. Donc en fait, mon frère, pour moi, c'est quelqu'un qui joue de la guitare en permanence.
Au niveau, au sein de la famille Dyens, est-ce que vous jouiez tous d'un instrument? Est-ce que c'était surtout Roland? Comment c'était au niveau de...
La famille Dyens, c'est une famille un peu particulière parce qu'on est tous dans le milieu artistique. Et depuis ma grand-mère, en fait. Et c'est étonnant parce qu'il n'y a pas un seul Dyens dans la famille qui ne soit pas artiste ou qui ne travaille pas dans le milieu artistique. En fait, dans notre famille proche, en fait, avec Roland, Notre père était artiste peintre et notre mère faisait du théâtre. Et puis, notre frère était designer aussi. Et tous nos cousins germains sont dans un art différent. Donc dans l'écriture, Dominique Dyens, notre cousine, est auteur. Ron Dyens est producteur de cinéma. Il a eu 3 Césars, puisqu'il est producteur de films d'animation, Sacre Bleu Productions. Notre cousine est photographe. Enfin voilà, toute la famille, en fait. Notre oncle était prix de Rome de sculpture. Il n'y a pas un Dyens qui ne soit pas dans les arts. Voilà. Donc c'est une famille très particulière et on a toujours été nourris d'artistique depuis notre plus jeune âge, en fait. On ne sait pas faire autre chose.
C'est beau. Et justement, toi, quelle est ta relation avec les arts? Est-ce que tu as joué d'un instrument? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que tu as eu envie de faire ou,
Alors, quand j'étais jeune, je jouais de la flûte alto. Mais bon, pas professionnellement du tout. Mais c'est quelque chose qui m'est toujours resté. Et j'ai toujours ma petite flûte dans un coin, avec toujours l'envie de reprendre. Mais en fait, moi, j'ai plutôt été dans la danse. J'étais chorégraphe, j'étais professeure de danse pendant des années. Et ensuite, maintenant, je m'occupe d'artistes. En fait, j'ai monté une petite boîte de production, la Locomotive des Arts, et je m'occupe d'artistes, du spectacle vivant. Donc voilà, je suis toujours restée dans les arts, même si je ne suis pas artiste moi-même, quoique je fais beaucoup de photos aussi.
Justement, est-ce que tu peux nous en dire plus sur ce que tu as créé autour de Roland, autour de sa mémoire,
Oui.
notamment en France, mais peut-être, je ne sais pas, peut-être que tu l'as développé aussi hors de la France. Est-ce que tu peux nous en dire un petit peu dessus?
Voilà, alors quand il est décédé en 2016, en fait, tu me demandais tout à l'heure quelle était ma relation de sœur. Et en fait, c'est ça qui est étrange, c'est que quand il est décédé, c'est là que j'ai appris, que j'ai compris que c'était un immense guitariste, adoré, aimé dans le monde entier. Et en fait, quand on a une relation de frère et sœur, on ne s'en rend pas compte. Puisque quand on se voyait souvent, on parlait des parents, de la famille, on allait manger ensemble, voilà, on parlait de tas de choses. Mais finalement, étrangement, je ne me rendais pas compte que c'était un très, très grand guitariste. Et quand il est parti, j'ai eu une montagne de messages. J'ai vu le monde qu'il y a eu à ses obsèques. Et là, je me suis dit, il y a un truc, quoi. Je crois que je ne savais pas que mon frère était un si grand artiste. Et évidemment, j'ai regretté de ne pas l'avoir su, mais c'est quelque chose d'étrange quand on est dans la famille, voilà, quand on se voyait à des fêtes familiales ensemble. On ne parlait pas de musique, on parlait de 1000 autres choses, on se marrait comme des fous. Et voilà, donc ça a été vraiment une révélation et je me suis dit, c'est incroyable quel grand homme il a été. Et donc, j'ai monté avec ses amis guitaristes les plus proches, une association qui s'appelle Association Roland Dyens in the Sky. Alors, c'est un jeu de mots, évidemment. In the Sky, ça fait référence à Tango en Sky, qui est sa musique fétiche, la plus jouée au monde, en fait. Et puis, Sky, le ciel, voilà, on n'y croit pas, mais bon, c'était un petit clin d'œil. Et cette association, donc, ma première préoccupation, ça a été ces manuscrits. Parce que Roland a écrit quelques 300 œuvres. Et je me suis dit que la première chose à faire était de préserver ces manuscrits, qu'ils ne soient pas détériorés, puisque tout est écrit au crayon gomme en fait. Roland ne faisait pas ne composait pas sur l'ordinateur, mais à la façon ancienne, crayon gomme. Et donc, il fallait absolument les préserver du temps, que ça ne s'efface pas, que ça ne soit pas brûlé, que ça ne soit pas inondé, que ça ne soit pas perdu. Et ma grande préoccupation, c'est de pouvoir préserver ces manuscrits pour les générations futures. Et donc, un des axes de l'association, c'est la préservation de ces 300 manuscrits. Et donc, à la création de l'asso, pendant le confinement, on a pris une stagiaire qui a numérisé, en fait, avec moi, on a numérisé les 300 œuvres de Roland, et surtout grâce à des dons des amis de l'association Roland Dyens, on a pu acheter des boîtes qui préservent les manuscrits. Ça nous a été recommandé par la Bibliothèque nationale, et surtout un coffre-fort qui préserve du feu, de l'eau, etc. Et donc tous ces manuscrits maintenant sont en sécurité, et ça, ouf, quoi. Pour les générations futures, c'est formidable. Dans 100 ans, ils trouveront tout intact.
On vous en est très reconnaissant.
Voilà, j'espère que ça sera utile.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir accepté, en tout cas, de faire cette vidéo, de faire cette interview. Et puis, voilà, bonne fin de journée. Puis on espère que, en tout cas, la mémoire de Roland Dyens va continuer à perdurer musicalement et s'étendre au-delà de la France.
Merci Valentin, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Wow. Two takeaways for me on that are the way we know our siblings, you know, and how we all sort of perceived Roland is, you know, is a very, very different experience. It's really cool to hear Laura's thoughts. And then the other thing that really gets stuck in my craw is that there are 300 pieces, and Roland has not published anything close to 300 pieces. So there might be a bunch of stuff that we have not seen.
Yeah, I know Roland told me that I haven't spent that much time with him, but when we did, we really got to talking, and he did tell me, like, yeah, my family have no idea what I do, or, you know, how successful I am at, especially as kids. Like, yeah, like, but you hear that from a lot of people who are famous for an art form, you know, actors and stuff. Yeah. Oh no, my kids are not impressed at all. You know, so he kind of knew that. And I would assume it's kind of refreshing to have people who aren't impressed by what you do, you know, when everybody else is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. It's like maybe a safe haven for them, you know, like exactly. To sort of come back and have these norms. And she said that, you know, they talked about 1,000 or 1,000,000 other things, food and cooking and different things, but never, you know, it's probably someone that didn't ask him what, you know, I've kind of probably for him a moronic question about, you know, what guitar he's playing or strings or what all these, you know, questions that you get asked, you know, it's just lovely. Yeah. I was just really struck by hearing, like, I don't know if any of you felt this, but when she was saying, like, he just made the kitchen table his practice room and relentlessly played guitar, and she just kind of thought, like, oh, it's my brother's thing. He just plays guitar. He just does it. You know, it's just taken for granted.
But Roland does remind me of like, you know, you hear stories of Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits has a great quote, and it's, I still remember what the Fender catalog at my local music store smelled like. You know, because I've gone in as like a you know, like a 12-year-old kid with no money and just looked through the catalog that was there, and just so much. So Roland does strike me as one of those guys that was just guitar obsessed, and guitar of all sorts too. Like that's one of the things we want to not miss tonight, is just talking about the fact that he's definitely one of us. He's a classical guitarist, but he's also just a guitarist more at large, touching like his compositional style touches kind of everything at once without being a compromise. So yeah, that sounds just about right. One of these guys that had guitar on the head in his head all the time.
I do remember him telling me about that kitchen table and practicing so much at the kitchen table. And I think with that immense amount of practice that he did, and his practice with all kinds of elements, like the composing, the playing, the improvising, the arranging, all of that stuff, he was just, it struck me one day listening to him play that he was kind of a native speaker of the guitar. in a way that many of us, we've kind of taken it on and we work and we do our best, but he just was the guitar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I think something that you just sort of make me think of, Tracy, there is how much he, I don't mean he wasn't interested in what other people thought. Of course he was, because he's, you know, a human being and he's like a performer, a musician and a composer. But he was so his own kind of like style and his own aesthetic, and he sort of like doesn't need the judgment of anybody sort of thinking it's anything other than like Roland Dyens doing Roland Dyens' thing. Like it was what you just said, like, you know, you'd heard the kitchen table anecdote as well, and Louis had said, like, you know, he's just got guitar in the head. I don't know when you first heard Dyens, but I actually first heard him playing Soar. I didn't hear him playing his own music. I heard him playing, I think it was Marlborough Variations or something else. And like a lot of people kind of judge players by like repertoire choices, or they judge people by like the aesthetic that maybe they happen to give out at a certain time in their career for whatever reason. And it's like Roland could do anything with the guitar. Like, you know, you say he's got guitar in the head, he's also got guitar in the hands. I mean, like, we've all heard him do things that you sort of think, well, that's impossible. you know, like, I don't understand how that just actually happened. Like, you know, I mean, I've been in concerts of Roland Dyens and just been going, yeah, I understand this instrument, and I don't actually know what just took place. I couldn't write that down. You know, I couldn't figure out how he's got that sound or how he's created that atmosphere with the instrument. I mean, he was, like you say, he inhabited the guitar, or he embodied the guitar. I think it's a really true statement, and there are very few people to which that statement really, really pertains, you know?
I think also guitar was a lot different when I first heard Roland, at least in Canada it was. I mean, the style that people were going for was kind of macho in a way, I would say. Loud, fast, no mistakes, this sort of just very powerful. Yeah. And when I heard him, I was first in Montreal, Guitar Society of Montreal. And he was the opposite of that. And there was so much tenderness and feeling in his playing and charm and delight. You know, it was just the complete opposite of this sort of heavy aesthetic that was, you know, at the time popular. And, you know, guitar has developed so much technically, and people have become much more musical in the last, say, 25 years that, you know, at the time it was just an enormous revelation for me that that was possible to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, very well said. And actually, I think there was a little bit at least in my memory of this, I think there was a little bit of a lag between when Roland sort of comes on the scene and his playing and his pieces start to enter the broader repertoire. You know, I found that other players, major artists who were taking on Roland's music, were sort of playing it in that sort of macho, sort of, you know, award winner type of way. And I feel like that has changed in a big way too. And it's funny which sort of stream of the sort of guitar world Roland's influence has, you know, sort of ended up showing up. It's kind of cool.
The most creative people often, isn't that right, Ine? When was the first time you heard him play?
In Brussels at the Brussels Guitar Festival. It was like a masterclass, but yeah, when I was like 15, 16 years old, it was very popular all of a sudden around my age category to play a lot of Dyens pieces. So I was really curious to see him, and then he was giving masterclasses, so I just stayed there and watched every single one of them. And yeah, it was very nice to see. And I remember thinking, like, everybody's playing his music, but I would like to know what he would teach, like, on music that he didn't write, but nobody seemed to have like had that idea at that time. So I always think that's funny. So yeah.
Did he have a squeak pig with him at the master classes?
No,
because I remember, did everybody ever see the pink squeak pig?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This was amazing. Yeah. So when he was in Scotland, he was giving classes, and like, there was a lot of students from the conservatoire there, like, and they were all excited to play to Dyens and stuff, and they had their Libra Sonatina ready, or their Song Capricorn, or whatever it was. And Dyens had this like tiny little toy pig in the inside like of his jacket pocket, and every time there was any squeak, like string noise on the bass strings, any squeak, any position shift and squeak, the little pig would go like oink. And I mean, it was like the most passive aggressive. I mean, you couldn't do it now. Do you know what I mean? He'd be in jail. Mind you, he'd probably been in jail before then. But anyway, I mean, it was squeaking away like nothing on earth. Like, and some of the kids were cracking up, and some of the kids were like, I think there was some people trying to find that pig and put that pig in the sea. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it was amazing. So this, every time you squeaked, you got a little oink, but it was just funny because he was just like, it's really interruptive, isn't it? It's really, it spoils the mood, so let's try and get rid of it, so it was just fun, just interesting to see.
Yeah, he really took, like Tracy was saying, he took sort of the jock mentality out of the instrument in a nice way. Without, how do you take the jock out of, an area like this without being confronting to it? Because he just went and did his own thing. I remember there was a thing that GFA did years ago where there would be like a kind of a live chat if somebody would answer your question. So they had Manuel for a while where you could write in questions, and it was a kind of forum. This is 15 years ago, maybe, or something. And he was there for a week where he answered, and his answers were always really great. Like, people would say, well, I'm practicing this way and I'm doing this many hours and this, and it sounded like people talking about how many weights they can lift when they're training to pump iron. And that was one of his comments, like, where's the art? Where's the flowers? Where's the poetry in what you're playing? And and that's one thing I always liked about him too. Tracy can back me up here. Canadians, like, the joke, how you get 20 Canadians out of a pool? You say, can you guys get out of the pool? But like, you'll have conversations with people, and in your brain, you're thinking, I really disagree with this person. And you'll say, oh, really? I see what you mean. He would really disagree with you, neither politely nor impolitely, but just as a matter of, it was honest. Like, so I love him that way. If he liked you or didn't like you, you didn't have to wonder. You knew where you stood. And it's a really, like you said before, Matthew, just really very much himself. Like, he's one of the most himself and nobody else people I've ever met. And really like a true iconoclast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it was almost impossible to take offense, I think, at those things that he said. I remember I played for him at that Montreal trip because somebody had dropped out, and they said, does anyone want to play? And I had driven there from Toronto. I had my guitar. I was like, and he said, fine. So I played for him, and it went well. It was good masterclass. But at one point, he turns to the audience. He says, our thumb is just rude. My thumb was rude. So, I mean, I was struggling with my thumb tone. Like, it was a big issue for me at the time. And that was that. After that, I was like, I just got to fix this. I'm going to fix this right now. So I did.
He's also one of those guys that, like, you realized what he said about 20 minutes after he said it to you. Then you kind of went, oh, yeah, kept on talking. And then you were like, wait a minute, what did he say? Yeah. I remember asking him at halftime at a concert in Germany, like, how do you feel it's going? And he was like, indecently. And I was like, oh, yeah, totally, yeah. And then, like, kept on talking. I was like, what, indecent? Well, what did you do in the first half? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what actually took place? It's just, his choice of words was magic.
When he came to Montreal for the first time, which would be 93 or 4, it was a big deal. So we all went up from different parts of the province and auditioned to be in the master class. And I was lucky to be in. I remember I was doing last movement of the Hinestera Sonata, and it's just one of those great master class quotes. He points to something, because I don't like that. I say, oh, is it the effect I'm doing or the way I'm doing it? He said, both. I'll fix that.
But you don't take offense, like you're saying, Tracy. You don't take offense with Roland, because he also wants to have a discourse which is honest, and he wants to be able to actually deal with the things that are important in making music. So actually it's a badge of honor, and you shouldn't go out your way to look for it, but it's definitely something that, like, you know, if Roland disagreed with you and you then went on to have a really good, meaningful conversation, it was great. I mean, I remember I recorded some of his music one time and he kept me on the phone from Paris, like, and I'm sitting in my kitchen in Glasgow listening to this guy shouting at me for about 3 hours, you know, because I had forgotten to do a particular accent on a particular note. And he was right. And I probably wasn't taking it seriously enough, you know, and he knew that. So he was torturing me, like, and keeping me on the call until I, like, you know, really, really said sorry, you know. So I think it's important to have those characters in the world who tell it like it is, you know, because it's honest, you know. Before we, because we've got a lot of things to share with everybody tonight and a lot of fun things. I just saw a comment coming from Valentine saying that Laura had actually said to him that, you know, you said it's amazing he's written 300 pieces. I think someone commented on the fact that, you know, very few of them really are published, you know, so we, you know, Laura's set into this great work of archiving. And Laura obviously shared with Valentine that there's going to be a premiere in October this year of a composition from 1993. So hopefully the collection in the archive is going to start to show us some new pieces. And that takes us nicely to the latest very visible project of Roland's music, which is all across social media, the Lay 100 series that's taking place on YouTube through Productions Dose. And Louis, you're, you know, in many ways, one of the sort of main figures behind bringing 100 guitar players from all over the world together to celebrate Roland's music. And maybe before you go into that in some detail with Matthew, I'll play a little compilation from that series. I can't play, I don't know how many you've got out so far. It's in its 60s, isn't it?
Yeah, we're 60. The next one, which dovetails into what Monday, the next release is number 68.
Okay, and we're giving people a sneak preview of that today at the end of this compilation. I mean, you're going to see some phenomenal guitar players in this. Two of them are actually live with us on the chat right now. And you're also going to see, you know, players celebrating Dyens' music from all over the world. And I'm sure many of you will recognize some of the faces and performers you're about to see. And after we have this little brief insight musically, Louis and Matt can discuss a little bit more about what's behind the project and how it is just celebrating Roland's wonderful legacy. So here we go.
That's amazing. Louis, can you tell our viewers, some of them may be unfamiliar with Lay 100 to begin with. Can you talk just a little bit about the pieces
Sure.
themselves, and then of course about this rather remarkable project that you're
I know.
undertaking?
Well, the pieces really were Roland got flack from friend guitarists that, your pieces are great, but they're always so hard and big and demanding. So there was a lot of requests for him to do some more junior pieces. And then he did the series, the letter series, which are much more intermediate, much more different people at different levels can approach some of them. And then he was given a request for like a second series. So he started, and it just, the gates of inspiration just opened wide, and out came 100 pieces over a relatively short amount of time. And what he decided with these pieces, from what I gather, is to have them be, and he calls them in French, like he liked to invent little neologisms of like take two words and, crash them together and create a new little words. Like the play on words, I mean, for those of you that don't speak French, like some of the play on words in the titles of his general pieces that are in French are always so funny and clever. So he wanted them to be like mini piece studies, which he called pièces études. So when you read through these pieces, most of them have a pedagogical intent that'll help you work through not squeaking, portamentos, a whole bunch of stuff. So this, I'd read about this series somewhere and bought book one, and I had it at home when it was published in, I'm going to say 2015 or something like that. And then when he passed late in 2016, we have a festival here in Ottawa every February, and it was a big banner year. So we put out all the stops, and we had the Assads as our guests. And when I always do an interview with the main guest, so Sergio and I were chatting about different things, and this interview's on YouTube, you can find it and watch it. And just sort of spur of the moment, we started talking about Roland, his passing, and Sergio, and we're very close, and he just said, yeah, it's really sad. And he was talking about some of the Piazzolla arrangements that Roland did, which were the last things he did before passing away. And he says, I've seen advanced copies, and they're brilliant and all this. And we're talking about what a loss it is for our world. And that just sort of, those two little separate things together, knowing there was this collection of 100, we'll call them easy pieces by Roland Dyens, and this idea that one of the figureheads of our world community of classical guitar had just left us. I thought we just needed to do something, call it a statement by the community, just to sort of say. So I started asking around, and I asked Fabio Zanon first. I'm pretty good mates with him, and he said, sure, whatever, I'm in. And this was in like the fall of 2017 or something, like the spring of 2017. And I got a bunch of people interested. And the initial idea was we're going to get audio recordings, and we just sort of house them at Les Productions d'Oz's website. So when you're looking through the music, there'd be a collection somewhere. And something about the project, it didn't have the kind of legs, and it sort of died. And then during sort of middle of the pandemic, it kind of occurred to me, as things were starting to open up, and like the idea that, life is going to start, the idea came back to me, and I said, you know what, everybody right now has their own video equipment, or is friends with somebody who does, or, everybody was putting out videos at a rate they weren't before. And then it just clicked. Of course, it'll all be performance videos. So I started writing to people again, and I have people have said, I'm just so busy, I can't, but nobody said no outright. And like, nobody's getting paid, and everybody's doing it. Everybody who got involved, they were either doing it like the really, the big A-listers who are there, they were friends with Roland, they said, sure. And then people who are younger, maybe that didn't get a chance to meet him, but the idea to be part of a tribute was just, too much to say no. So everybody's been really great. And it's been fun for me, because I've had the chance to just sort of reach out to people that I hadn't met yet. and introduce myself and say, "Hi, I'm doing this project," and when we went from there. And of course, people that I had already met were like the first ports of call. So it's been really, it's about as much work as one would imagine to herd cats, like, you know, we guitarists are. Oh, right, I did promise I was going to do that. What's the deadline? Tomorrow. Okay, I can do this. And then people turn in some great videos. I just want to throw in, by the way, like, I'm glad we got Matthew McAllister's video in there, because I was asking him to do it. He says, "Oh, modesty says no." But if anybody who hasn't seen it, go watch it entirely. It has my favorite page turn I've ever seen in a piece of music. I won't say what it is, and maybe I'm overselling it, but I think it's so cool the way you did that. So yeah,
you're not even supposed to see it.
Well, it's kind of like that too. I just thought it was the coolest thing, really.
I was trying to channel a bit of that Dyens magic, you know.
Well, exactly, yeah. And you know, Patrick Roux's video, he was sitting cross-legged because he said, "I've seen Roland play like that all the time." So that was an extra little bit of tribute he did that way. When I saw my video, I was just glad I'm not wearing the same shirt, because that would have been weird. I wear that shirt a lot, right?
You know, it's funny you mentioned Patrick Roux. Sorry, Tracy. I just wanted to jump in about something about Patrick, and then I'll leave it open to yourself. But maybe for European guitarists and UK bass guitarists and stuff like that, Patrick's not necessarily. Some of his compositions and obviously his work. I think in early, Canadian Guitar Quartet, Louis, you'll be able to speak to that, But man alive, like, I am so happy to be seeing that man playing the guitar. It is so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. He is just like,
he is part of that thread of not jock players.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's got, like, trust me, I've seen him up close, and I played with him for 10 years. He's got chops, really does. But he's not bothered by it too much, like, I was really glad he got in.
Yeah. Well, it's just like what we were saying about Roland. He had plenty technical facility, but chooses only to show it when it's actually necessary, when it's required, when the music requires it,
But it also takes great technical control to express the kinds of things that he's expressing with his, gentler ideas. Like, it's not as if it's easy to do what Patrick is doing. But what I wanted to say, though, is I love Patrick's video, but what I wanted to say is one of those plays on words that you're talking about, Louis, is the leçon, like the 100. It's les 100 doesn't really get you there, but it's leçon because it's a lesson. It's leçon in French. So it's a play on words, and that's why there's 100 of them. He told me, there's got to be 100, and at first I didn't get it.
Yeah, I just got it.
Why are you going to write a whole 100 pieces for pedagogical purposes? But because he loved plays on words so much, it had to be that. So,
well, I think one of the really gorgeous aspects of this project, Louis, is that I became aware of them because a lot of my students play the pieces, and I kind of got to know them really as student pieces. But what this video project really points out in ways that I don't know would be quite so distinctly clear is how much gorgeous, interesting, inventive music is on those pages, that if we if you and our other guests who've played these pieces really display, the like virtuoso guitar players.
It was really fun to work through those pieces. Like Tracy and Matthew, you can like say your own things, but just to get one of the reasons I had this idea and I thought it would work is because you could do this with, any of our great current composers. We're of an age where some of them we're gonna be around when they pass away. It's just an unfortunate thing in a way, but we couldn't mount this kind of thing for like the big solo works of any of them, because people are not going to have the time to learn them and spend all this time for free. But all these players had like a 1.5-2 minute piece that wasn't going to kill them to learn, but they were going to be able to really get their hands in and really enjoy and bring out. And that's what everybody did. I mean, my God, Gabriel Bianco's performance. Like, here's a guy who's, you know, busy, and you can tell when you watch the whole take, you know, some of us, and it's fine, had the score in front of us, you know, off to the side, whatever, but he had it all memorized. There was no score, and you can tell like he really put his hands into it and got really like milked the piece. Well, not milked the piece. That's a kind of a pejorative way of saying it, but really went in and found the depth that is there to be found. And like when I, you know, in between students, sometimes I'll just noodle through my piece again because it's just so lovely to play.
Yeah,
it feels great. Yeah.
Well, it's a love letter to not only to Roland's music, but to the guitar community that you've done, and we're very grateful for it.
What I'm most happy for is it's become its own thing in lots of ways, which is great. And I just wanted like the world community of guitarists through, you know, 100 representatives to just like make this statement, this wonderful, strange alien of a human being that was among us for a while is gone, and we should just, you know, say something about it. And that was a nice way.
Yeah.
And you know, the ones who were his friends are the ones you can really tell. It's all through emails, but you can tell, like, you know, Dale Kavanaugh, the way she was like, she jumped in and no problem, and she did all the video like recording herself. She'd like, write to me, I'm recording now, my mic doesn't work, what do I do? I'm not there. She says, oh wait, I figured. Then like 10 minutes later, another email, I figured it out, the video's coming, you
know. We have a question in the comments that Louis, you can probably answer. Gail asks, where can this compilation be seen?
It's the YouTube channel that is run by Les Productions Dyens. So anybody who already knows the music publishing house, Productions Dyens, if we say it in kind of English, Dyens like of Oz, like in the Wizard of Oz. But also, really, if you just search Tracy's name or Matthew's name or my name on YouTube, I don't have so many solo videos. It'll come up pretty quick, and then you can click on the Productions Dyens icon, and it'll take you to their webpage, their YouTube page.
It's funny you mentioned Gabriel there, Louis, because I think I'm getting this the right. Yeah, I'm getting this the right way around. I invited Roland for his concert in Scotland. You know, I think his only ever concert in Scotland, and he came to play, and it was incredible. And we'll hear a bit of it later on as a little surprise in this chat. But the year after him was coming Gabriel Bianco to play, and Gabriel's been quite a few times now to my little guitar retreat, and we have this thing on the last night. It's a bit of a kind of quiz. It's just a bit of fun. We're all in a library together, you know, talking about guitar. And Roland was just being absolutely amazing. He loved this idea that we had this quiz at the end on the Sunday night. And it was really all he thought about and talked about the entire time he was there. And he was like asking me the rules and like getting me to write them down. And then we had to have like a sort of steward's inquiry. And like, you know, he wanted everything checked and triple checked. Like, you know, he invented his own round for the quiz. I mean, like, it was just incredible. You can imagine if you know him. And on the last night, he said, oh, I used to reveal who the guest artist was during the quiz, like, you know, and say, okay, next, you know, we've got David Russell, or we've got whoever it is coming. And I said, oh, we've got Gabriel Bianco. And Roland was just like, I am so proud of Gabriel, and just was like beaming and just really happy. And I said, oh, did you teach him? And he said, no, I'm just really proud of him. And I said, oh, is it because he's French? And he was like, no, I'm just really proud of him. And Gabriel came, and I remember, I had this really funny conversation with Roland, and he's so proud of you. And Gabriel was like, really? I thought he didn't like me. It was amazing. It was just like, you know, to see, I mean, to have like Gabriel in that series playing, and you say like so deeply getting something out of the music and have it memorized. And it's just like, again, like not judging someone by their aesthetic or not thinking what you think they might be thinking. Like Roland, you know, we actually then had a conversation about Gabriel, and it was so sweet, some of the things that he was so legitimately like really proud for achieving. So, you know, you might think that he's completely wrapped up in his own world of composition and his own performance style, but actually he was very aware of the culture around him, you know, and not just the French culture, you know. It's kind of fascinating to see, you know, when you got talking to him, who he admired, for what reason.
he spoke many languages. Like his favorite joke was, I forget how many, but I'll say like 4.5 languages. And he says, oh, then what are they? He says, well, I speak Italian, Portuguese, English, Spanish. And he says, what's the half one? Oh, I speak a little French. You know?
It's exactly that. There's Anne, who often comes to the guitar retreat, just pitching in with like the guitar without strings. That was his round that he created. So you had to take all the strings off a guitar and you had to mime a piece, and everyone had to guess what the piece was, you know. Whoa. And of course, like, you know, sometimes you would guess it before they played a note just by how they sort of like, you know, squared up to the instrument before they started. It was absolutely amazing.
Oh.
But like, as I've said before in the show, I want to keep things moving, and it's not because we couldn't talk about Lay 100 all night. And as Gail sort of asked, where can we see the series? And as Louis said, it's on YouTube. There's a huge playlist, and you will see some phenomenal performances. We couldn't share all of them tonight, and they're, you know, I apologize if someone thinks we should have shown their video. There are some absolutely stellar performances on that.
If I can just throw in, just in case somebody missed it, that last little bit of Pavel Steidl, that one is not out yet. It comes out Monday. So we got here on the Duo Talk a little sneak peek. Feels like the old Johnny Carson show.
Totally.
My movie's coming out. Yeah. So and again, like, I got Pavel Steidl to be in my video thing. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah. You can retire a happy man now, Louis.
That's what I'm planning to do. Once we get to the last one, I'm
practical, you know. Yeah. Well, now it would be lovely to move on. One of our guests tonight is Ine Klerks, wonderful Belgian guitarist, who has had an association with Scotland and coming across for lessons and festivals and all sorts for a long time. And I've been delighted to sort of see Ine's like creative mind at work with the music of Dyens. I mean, Ine used to just to play his pieces on guitar like all of us mere mortals do. You used to just do that, and now you do this incredible project with Dyens' music. And I think before we start to sort of interrogate you about what it's all about and you let us know, we can just hear a clip of your amazing Ensemble Drake, your band, playing a little bit of that amazing final movement of Dyens' Libre Sonatine. And after the clip is over, you can explain to us what this is all about. It's just incredible. So here we go.
Yes.
Yay.
So this is such a cool project, and you had actually described this to me a few months ago, and the description of it and the reality of it were just like, at least in what I was imagining, are so different. Like I had imagined this like very faithful interpretation, like which honestly it's probably not what you described at all. It was just like kind of what was in my head. But this is so cool. You're bringing out really an aspect of Roland that I think I don't know if it often gets overlooked, but it can get overlooked, which is what a remarkable improviser he was, and what a remarkable arranger he was. And I think you're doing amazing stuff. So where did this idea come from, and how did it materialize?
Well, it actually started with me going to Iserlohn in 2016, right before he passed away. And I was playing some pieces of his, but I was also in the concert, and it just struck me. And then I decided to play, like, for my first masters, only Dyens music. So that's actually where it started. So make a full program out of it. But I was also already starting my thesis, which revolved around like, how can we bring classical guitar to a modern day audience in a way that like doesn't make them go like, oh, classical music, Mm-hmm. And I experimented a little bit with different things, one of which was this. So I played a solo project. I played the one with an actress that was like narrating everything around the pieces, and then this one with the arrangements. And then we tested stuff, and then the best project would be like the one that I would do for my final master's concert. So and then this came out, and it was just so much fun to work around it. And the thing that stayed with me most from that concert in Iserlohn, from Roland, was the improvisation part. Like, he just started out sitting behind the guitar with his hand on and his head on his hands and just staring into the hall, like assessing everyone, just really sitting silent for like a minute or something, which was like, it's nobody ever does that. So it was like, whoa, what's happening? And then he started improvising, and it was just so marveled at how, we don't ever do that as classical guitarists. We don't nurture this skill, and it's fascinating because, it's fascinating. And then when we started this project, we really wanted to stay true to that aspect, like the improvisation, and that everything that he's written stems from improvising at some point. So we use that as a basis to arrange everything. So most of it is just like, here's the score, let's try something, and does the stuff that we don't like. And try to enhance all the different aspects that are already in the music, like the Latin stuff, the jazz, French chanson, all those elements that are already in there, to really enhance them with the percussion, with the double bass. As you've heard before. So also in the video, there's this whole part that we just keep the same loop. There's the little thing, and that everybody just improvises like it's like a jazz program at all of a sudden. So we just try like to noodle around with that improvisation aspect.
And why that particular instrumentation?
Good question, because it's more or less like a flamenco combo, jazz combo crossover. Okay. And we really wanted a rhythm section, so like the drum and the double bass were given. And I wanted something else to enhance the melody part, because as a guitarist, you're always doing everything at once, but it's nice that someone can actually double and get the overall feel of it out more than we, especially when there's already percussion and double bass, then you're really fighting to be heard a little bit. So it's like nice to have the extra dimension.
Dimension is the right word. Dimension is it's giving a new reimagining to his repertoire. It's fascinating, and it's also bringing musicians that probably would never play a piece by Dyens into his output, into his oeuvre, and then they can do things with it, which is amazing. I mean, I get like Stefan Grappelli and Django Reinhardt buzzes sometimes when I'm listening to your stuff with the violinist playing, and then when you have the percussion and the bass, I'm sort of thinking, oh, this is like, you know, it's like there's an amazing album that Gary Peacock, the double bass player, did with Ralph Towner, and it sounds a little bit like that sometimes. And then, you know, I think one of Dyens' sons was a percussionist and plays on one of Dyens' records with him. And it reminds me of that as well. Like, and I don't know if he plays cajon, but he definitely plays, you know, some hand percussion behind Roland, you know, just to give it a rhythmical groove that Roland obviously wanted. And it's just, it sits so well. Like when you first started this project, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, you know, probably had a teacher hat on. I'm not sure about this. Wait, what was there better be something I can say? Do you know what I mean? You know, I better find a fault here somewhere. And then you see what you're putting together, and it's like it works. You know, it just works. I'm sorry that he's not around to see it.
Yeah, me too.
You know.
Yeah, we started the project also, like, I decided to play these pieces, and then he passed away. So all of a sudden it became like this homage, which wasn't the initial idea. So yeah. But yeah.
One quick note that I'd like for our viewers to be aware of is that there is much more. Your ensemble plays a lot more beyond Roland's music as well. So if you're impressed with what you've seen, please check out more of Ensemble Drake stuff. This is pretty remarkable. I'm partial to the minimalistic stuff that you guys do. I think your arrangements are incredible, and congratulations. It's really fantastic.
You've got a fan club, Ine. Like, what you want to if you're ever feeling down, right? If you're ever having a low moment, just come back to this video and look at the live chat. It is just like, you know, I mean, you're going to be getting letters here. Like, you know, it's I absolutely love it. You've got a hit on your hands, you know. Well, we're going to show another clip of your band before we move on to another part of Dyens' magic. And it's another clip of your Ensemble Drake, and this time you're really you're arranging an arrangement. You know, maybe you want to speak a little bit to this before we play it, so that you can sort of it's obviously the Felicidade. So, like, you know, it's already an arrangement, and then you're doing something on top of it. But did Dyens' arranging inspire you? How did this one come about?
Well, yeah, I really liked the piece, and the other, actually, that piece was a choice by the guys. Because we were looking for another piece to make it like a set, because we had 45 minutes and we wanted to make it like an hour. And we started listening to stuff, and they were like, oh, this is nice. So yeah, we took that one. Then Daniele has the double bass player. He has like a background in playing, and he actually started out as an electric bass player with metal music. So he went with the in-between part where it goes back to the original melody. He was like, yeah, let's just do something really crazy with it, because Roland already did some rather crazy stuff to the original. So let's take that also to the next level and really, just derail the whole thing. So that's actually how it came around. So it's like this double entendre of like, this double thing of the sweet melody and the Latin jazz vibe on one side, and then the total disaster that comes after.
Well, I think we're going to hear that total disaster, but like no one ever going to think of it in those terms. It's just a total success. But this is the end of the
around a little, and then this came out. So yeah,
that's great. Do we give a nod to our friend of the show, Uros Baric? I think he is responsible for both the audio and the video on this one.
Yeah, on that one, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, Uros has been on the show before, and you know, the best ears in the business. But let's have a little listen to the Jobim track, Felicidade, by Ensemble Drake.
So cool. So cool.
Bravo. Gorgeous stuff. Amazing. Thank you so much, Ine, for that brilliant contribution. So now we're moving on to another part of the show, and it's really pretty special now. And we have so much to thank you for, Tracy Ann, not just your beautiful guitar playing and your commissioning of music that's going to last forever from Roland, with obviously your partner Rob and the Chroma Duo, but also you took some time with Roland, and obviously as he's passed now, what you did in interviewing him and spending some time with him and talking to him about music is really left a beautiful legacy. And Tracy has been kind enough to share not only a performance of her Chroma Duo performing one of Roland's works, which we're going to see, but before we see that, we're also going to get to listen to the man himself. So we're going to hear a little bit from Roland. And when you sent me this footage, I'm sure you'll sort of back me up on this, Tracy. I was like, okay, it's in a hotel room. He's smoking cigarettes. He's being super French, and he's talking about this, and then he talks about that, and then suddenly something else happens, and he's away over here, and I'm like, okay, context. How do we bring this back? Which, if you've ever had a conversation with the man, that's pretty normal.
Of course.
I think the interview was also better because he sort of asked himself questions and continued on and answered them. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, but sometimes he didn't actually say that out loud, right? He was just talking literally to himself in his head. I mean, I mean, I've worked with it the last day or so just to find some things. And I think, like, the conversation well, but obviously everyone listening's never seen this before. And obviously our guests here, and Roland is going to speak to, I think what you maybe ask him just before he starts here is like, to talk about his music, to talk about, what he does as a composer and what that means. And you can see, and you'll all see at the start of this interview, that faced with that question of like talking about his music, he cannot answer it anything other than honest. And it's so beautiful. So we're going to hear him just discuss a little bit about the music he's written for you and your duo, and then also just general things about, I think, being Roland Dyens. And then it will go straight into a beautiful performance that you gave with Rob in Germany a few years ago. And then after that, we'd love to hear from you about your insights into spending that sort of precious time with the man. So here we can hear from the man himself, the late, great Roland Dyens.
What to say about that? I cannot speak about my music, my dear. Oh my God. I think we can do everything with two guitars. Everything could be done with two guitars, and I felt really comfortable in writing for you this duo, because the choice of the tuning at the beginning, just I would think, oh, I'm gonna have fun with that, with the mixing of E flat and A and G, and it started with just a kind of African motif. The very beginning, it could be African, Brazilian, Afro-Brazilian, and then I let me go, because I was surrounded with this culture I love. So it had to sound Brazilian and modern, and yes, when this Michel Berge mentioned the fact sentimental music, absolutely. I revindicate that. I assume that. I want to be lyrical, abstract. Which, yeah, a good definition of what I'm doing. You know, it's a lyrical abstraction, but lyrical all the time. When I'm composing, you know, I'm always thinking, is my music modern enough? Is my music complicated enough? Is not this part too easy, too candy, too sentimental, too, you know? Of course. And what imports me is, of course, the real, big public, you know, comme des grands, for example. Good example. Touching music, you know, very touching music. It's not the most important thing, you know, to reach people's hearts. So with the years I try, and it's not easy sometimes, to being absolutely honest with myself, you know. No cheating, no pretending I'm able to write. I have to write modern, contemporary in the meaning of atonal music because I want to be considered as a serious and clever composer. No, the more I go, the more I think the most important and difficult thing is to reach people's heart. I mean, people, lambda people, and not some integrist of music, you know. I've done, you know. But we all thought of that, you know, being modern and complicated and complex and hard to be understood, which is good. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I love no. Your music is very interesting. I hate this word. And I think my pride is that no one told me that. I think, really. Oh, very interesting. Never. I would hate that, you know. Yeah.
The
So
Roland Dyens fade out.
I
It's a
know.
thing.
I was going to say that because he's written out, keep moving, even though you're not playing, and then sit for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, don't move, ne bouge pas. So yeah, definitely.
I see him do like his hang on,
I
you know,
what you're gonna do.
and then he'll go.
It's a little animal.
So, like, no blowing smoke, but that's one of my favorite pieces ever written for 2 guitars, and I think that your duo's recording of that piece, and actually the entire record, is an absolute landmark.
Oh, thanks.
And
Very nice of you to say.
and it's if you are not familiar with Chroma Duos, is that your first? That's your first recording for Naxos?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then another one coming up.
Hidden Waters. Roland wrote us a piece called Niterói, which is a city in Brazil, and the name of the city in English is Hidden Waters. So
Okay.
that's where that comes from. But we include those pieces as well, Comme des Grands, which he references in the video. And actually, when we were at Iserlohn, we didn't prepare an encore. And then everybody was playing encores, and Thomas was like, no encores, no talking kind of thing. So we ended up watching all these concerts, everyone's playing encores. So we were like, we have to have one. What are we going to play? And then we thought that we used to play that one all the time, and it'd be so nice to play after the world premiere of the Assad piece that he wrote for us in honor of Dyens. So yeah, those pieces, they are, lyrical and sentimental and beautiful. And maybe they might be a precursor to the Les 100, the Les 100 that you're talking about, because they were written supposedly for students, as something easy, but he was always quite frustrated with the student performances he would get from them, because they are tricky. There's a lot going on. So yeah, that's exactly the kind of pressure he was talking about, writing these sort of beautiful, touching pieces of music, rather than maybe a more academic, intellectual piece with gravitas, I guess you would say. But I don't know, I find it so beautiful and arresting, that little collection, and the piece he wrote for us as well. Incredible. If I can mention just a little bit more about the Assad piece, when our duo commissions pieces, we like to talk to the composer in question and come to some sort of mutual connection point, and that can vary a lot of sources of inspiration. But for Sergio, we very quickly came upon the idea to have a piece that was for Roland, because it was about 4.5 years, I guess, after his death that we approached Sergio, and we thought, wouldn't it be a lovely thing to have an homage for about, to commemorate 5 years past. And he's another composer who struggled with the pressure to be more academic and almost quit composing at some point. I think in the 80s, or before, just 1980 or something, he had a lot of struggles with that. And maybe Roland, when he says, we were all thinking about that, we were all thinking about, are we modern enough? Are we this enough and that enough? And obviously the Assads and Dyens had so much in common, with the connection to Brazil, and, being touring artists at that point, and just being friends. And anyway, the piece that we ended up getting, which we will be recording for Naxos in July 1st through 3rd, is way more than I could have ever expected. It's just such a beautiful kind of a love letter in a way to Dyens, and is kind of a portrait of Dyens. It goes through all of his influences. There's little snapshots of memory of different styles of chanson, of jazz, of classical, of Brazilian music, you know, MBP and MPB and Argentinian tango and all of this stuff. It's an incredibly rich piece, and it has that sort of lyrical quality to it that does catch audiences and is reminiscent of these connections that Roland would make with his audience. So we're just so honored to have that as part of our repertoire now. And really, it's just, you know, you commission work, and you know, you do often pay for the work, and we paid for this work, but when we got it, it just felt like a huge gift. It was just so wonderful to have this piece in existence and to have something to do with that. So anyway, we hope to make the best of the recording, Rob and I. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to say about that.
We're really looking forward to hearing the results. Actually, there was something I wanted to bring up. I wonder if your interpretation of something that Roland said at the very beginning of the clip, he was talking about, it was like the tuning with the two guitars, and he said, "Oh, then I've got this little idea, and it sounds like it's like a little motive from Africa, and then it's a little idea that," and I forgot where else he went, but there was one little thing that he said that I'm not sure if it was just I wanted to hear him say this, or if this is what you all interpreted, but he was like, "So I just let it go. I just let it, you know, sort of be."
He would think he would let himself go, like he would have. I want to have fun with that, you know. He says, you know, he wants to let me go. I think he says. I'm not sure. I let it go. I let me go. I think that might be what it was.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm assuming he means compositionally, as in like I'm gonna get out of my way. I'm gonna get out of my head, and I'm gonna write what I hear and what is honest, because that's where he kind of goes in this in this statement, which is, I think, an incredibly brave thing and a very difficult thing to do. It's really cool. So I don't know that. I mean, was that your read?
Yeah.
It was fascinating to hear him sort of analyze not anything about like the pieces existing on the guitar in that conversation. Like I think maybe like part of the letting go and part of the, you know, not wanting to conform to like the sort of musical complexity that therefore gives it value in contemporary music. I think like maybe there's a thing in Roland where he understands things instantly on a very emotional and expressive level. Like you used the word, Tracy, gravitas, like, you know, maybe that's what people thought he should be writing. And I'm like, there's a difference between brevity and gravitas that's quite definite in the way Roland plays and in the way Roland has that expression that's just potent. It's like shortness, it's quickness. It's like as soon as you are with him, you realize that this is not an ordinary human being, and your experience of the time is not ordinary. Like, I don't know if you all felt it, but when Roland came on the screen there, I was like, oh, hearing him talk again, hearing his voice, hearing the syntax, the way his speech works, you know, the way like there's so many things not coming out because the vocabulary is so limited to express what's going on inside the head. Like, you know, it's, I think like sometimes he's faced with letting things go all the time, you know, in performance, you saw it. You saw him, like Louis just demonstrated it. He literally lets things go because they don't just exist on the guitar. They also exist all around you. Like, you know, and he's pulling them towards you. I mean, we're going to see something in a minute of him actually literally almost doing that, you know, making something up out of thin air, but maybe because it's already there.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too, I mean, I haven't had any, only had this glass of white wine. Okay. Yeah. That's all.
It's easy sort of to, you know, you can talk things about your heroes. Oh, they're so great because they do this. And then they go, no, I'm not. my output's my output, but I worry about these things too. My guess, though, is that when Roland was writing and was really into it, the kind of struggles about, am I modern enough, he didn't struggle with them then. I would guess he struggled with them afterwards when he was thinking about his output. But whether that's the case or not, for me, his output is very pure and honest. You know, it's not, it doesn't seem to me at all diminished by the struggles of what is this supposed to be. The piece kind of lets the artwork be the artwork, you know, and sort of the nice ways, like anybody who's spiritual or religious will say I'm a conduit for these things. That's what it seems like to me. He's very pure that way, like a pure artist. And you know, if he were here, he'd tell me I'm full of it, but that's what it seems like to me, you know.
Yeah, but only for the fight, only for the joy of the fight, you know, and only because he was technically about 7 steps ahead. You know, I mean, like, I agree with you totally, Louis, but he's also doing that with a smile on his face because he knows something you don't know.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was always as well. You were like, and not because he's trying to be like pompous and smart, like not one of these like pseudo guitar intellectuals that wander around guitar festivals pretending to know everything. I mean, actually, like literally, he's like 4 or 5 steps ahead. Like, you know, because, you know, when he talks about the musical complexity and that sort of classical contemporary music world that he doesn't want to be part of, he talks about the fact that like what he wants to do is about connection and about the humanity of it. Like, you know, that honesty, like we've all discussed tonight, like honesty has been a word with Roland. It's like, it's so pure, you know? And I feel like he knows that he's onto something, like, because he's literally onto something. He doesn't need anyone really to define it. It's like when he talks about the sentimentality, he's like, absolutely, like for sure. It's full of it, you know? It's full of nostalgia. It's full of sentimentality. It's full of saudade. It's all this stuff. You know, it's gorgeous.
But I feel that despite being accessible and in a way popular, like his music is, in the larger sense of the word, popular music. It has that aspect. But the quality of the writing and the quality of the language and the quality of the sentiment still makes it every much as great as any of the greatest, like serious composition. It is serious composition.
Exactly.
It just happens to be also just really anybody can listen to it and enjoy it.
Well, exactly. I mean, no matter how cleverly someone wants to dress up snobbishness, it still is at its core snobbish. And, you know, this is what Dyens wasn't. Dyens loved music and wrote music and loved the sentimentality and the nostalgia. But like in that piece that we just heard Tracy and Rob play, there are 2 like main moments where he goes back to the same material with a reharmonization that is exceptionally clever. And a lot of composers would have missed that layering. Like they wouldn't have seen the point to go back and get that further level of poignancy out of such a simplistic sort of idea. I mean, like, I find his music is, I mean, complex. I mean, we've all tried to play some of his harder pieces or play some of his harder pieces. It's like looking at a score that's like Takamitsu, like, you know, in terms of like direction and notation and annotation. I mean, think of like some of the, I think Valentin mentioned them in the comments, think of some of his arrangements of the French songs, or think of even his arrangements of Chopin and Tchaikovsky, like incredibly complex, like to make them work on guitar and then have that intrinsic quality that it sounds right, that it works. Yeah. It's not cheap, you know, it's like absolutely right.
I heard him do his arrangement of Round Midnight live the first time I caught him in concert. That was his encore. I couldn't believe it. Like, it was a really, really, really good concert. We were all excited to see who was like the new guy for us, right? Like a new, like, honestly, I place him after Brouwer chronologically. He's the next single most important guitarist composer we have, I think, for how much he's influenced the overall direction. It's a big statement, but that's what I think. But we were just like floored by this concert, and then he pulls out this arrangement of Round Midnight, and I couldn't believe the mood casting involved. It stayed with, and this is, you know, like I said, 1993-4, yeah, and it's still clear in my memory as really a lovely concert moment. Yeah.
Or Nuage, when he does his arrangement of that, like, you know, it's kind of almost, I mean, I'll go one step further than your big statement. I'd say it's better than Brouwer.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even, it was more chronologically, like, you know, Brouwer sort of most important one character sort of that brought the guitar one way. And I think Roland brought it a really important way. I got to ask Patrick Roux many times about like inspiration for composition. And that's most people, if they know his name, they'll come across his compositions. And everybody who knows his stuff knows that Piazzolla was a huge influence to get him started to compose. But Roland was the other one. He had discovered Roland doing, he'd go do like various sessions that were available to classical guitarists in Europe during the 80s. And that's where he discovered this music. And he came back to North America saying, there's something there. I want to be like that. This lack of pretense, lack of it having to be one way. You write the way you want to write, and that's just the end of it.
Yeah. And the obsessiveness when he discovered a new thing, like Piscaglia, when he got into that, towards the end of his life, and these arrangements of Rosa and Carignoso and things that are just, again, fiendishly difficult to play, but get to the heart of the matter really quickly. Like he steps into those worlds, and like almost like a method actor, is like, well, I'm going to be in that now.
That's one thing I really admire about his compositional output. When he wants to go into a particular style, it is both him, yet perfectly convincing in that style too. Like, if you wanted to write in the 100 pieces, many of them are Brazilian influenced, and you wouldn't know he's not Brazilian.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the times at supper, he says, I always thought I was switched. As a baby, my parents stole me from a Brazilian family, because when I visited Brazil for the first time, I thought, I'm home. This is where I belong,
That's interesting. Well, listen, before we wrap up, I think Matt's got a few bits and pieces just like, to say about our next show and things like that. And then I want to just talk about the last piece of music that we're going to share with everyone this evening. So I'll hand over to you for just now, Mr. Cochran.
Yes. Well, our next show is going to be June 4th, and it's a direct outgrowth of listener comments or viewer comments from the last show that we did, a wonderful conversation that we had with Chris Mallett. So we are going to discuss how 3 different American classical guitar societies are building community-based organizations. So our guests will be Matthew Hinsley from the Austin Classical Guitar, Eric Mann from Cleveland Classical Guitar, and Brian Vaccaro from St. Louis Classical Guitar. So once again, that's coming up on June 4th, and that's going to be a really fascinating conversation about a really unique way of approaching the idea of a guitar organization within a community. So we're really excited about that talk.
I was going to give it a subtitle, which was, "Do you hate your guitar society too?" What can your guitar society do for you?
We'll let our guests answer the question.
I can't wait. Now, before we sort of hear Roland playing himself and performing, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being with us tonight. Louis, for the work you're doing with Lay 100, and just for your insights and your expertise. It's just been phenomenal. Ine, what creativity that, and this is just amazing. We just all want your ensemble to continue to bigger and better and bolder things. And we hope that other, young people watching what you're doing are inspired. Your colleagues and your friends think, guitar doesn't just have to be the way it's written on the page. You can go elsewhere with it, just like Roland inspired you. It's phenomenal. And Tracy and Rob, I know Rob's not here, but we heard Rob play beautifully tonight too. We look forward to hearing, what Sergio writes for you in memory of Roland. And again, thank you so much for letting us, have a sneak peek into your hotel room chat with Roland. Not everybody got one of those. I didn't get a hotel room chat with Roland. I just got told to stop smoking and grow up most of the time. That's what I got told. Probably quite good advice, actually, in fairness. But thank you all so much for your contributions. They've been really special. Yeah. So to finish off, and literally the show will just end once this piece finishes. We've been talking about improvisation a lot tonight, how it's inspired Ine's group, how it was a sort of fundamental part of Roland's output. There was actually a comment quite a lot earlier. It was from Brad, and I just wanted to share it. It says, Brad came on early in the chat, said, I saw Roland in the late 90s at Northwestern. I was inspired that he opened his concert with an improvisation, which is how I often start mine too. So there's another way that Roland inspired people. And you spoke to it, Ine, seeing him in Germany in Iserlohn, and that's where the footage was of Rob and Tracy Ann playing. It was the wonderful Iserlohn Guitar Festival, where Roland was a guest many times. Roland came to Scotland and he played in my little classical guitar retreat, which is in like the little Cathedral of the Isles on the island of Cumbrae. And Roland arrived on day one and was like staying in a room, like a really sort of creepy old room at the top. And like he came down at breakfast and he just talked about all the ghosts that he'd met, you know, and he'd been talking to them in the night. And he went round everybody at breakfast and he was like, have you met Albert? Have you met this one? And he had stories for them all and he would talk to them in nighttime. And he spent all week with everyone at breakfast and at lunch and at dinner, walking around this old cathedral and all the grounds and the libraries and stuff, talking about all the ghosts, talking about the place. And then when he came out to play his concert, everybody had had a personal conversation with Roland. And it had been an imaginative, like creative conversation about the building, about their time there, about the people that he'd invented or that he'd maybe met from a different world that evening. It was amazing. And he just had everybody completely focused on listening to him play. And he opened with an improvisation, which we'll hear now. And then we'll just, we'll just go offline thinking about Roland and thinking about the magic that he does. He quotes everybody, Gershwin, Brouwer, Taraga, they're all in this. They're all hiding inside the improvisation, getting a chance to come out like little ghosts. It's beautiful. So again, thank you all so much for this evening. And let's just have a listen to the man himself, improvising the way no one else can.